John Marks, who's Senior Vice President, Entertainment Research for Turner. Thank you so much for your time.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So let's start with your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, I was in college at Cornell University in the early 80s and in a liberal arts program, and I had not only did I have no idea what I wanted to do for a living, I really didn't think about it very much when I was in school. And then I followed my wife my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, to New York City, and started looking for jobs. And one of the things I knew that New York was famous for was advertising agencies. So I started just cold calling them, and I got an interview at Young and Rubicam with a gentleman by the name of David Marantz, who has had a long, distinguished career in research, as I'm sure just about everybody watching this or reading this knows. And he was in a department called Media Research, and I had no idea what that was. And he sat down and he explained it to me, and it sounded really interesting. And we had great chemistry, frankly. And I ended up working for him for 8 years, and I've been in the media research industry ever since. And that was, it's now going on 30 years.
And where did you go after Young and Rubicam?
So David and I worked together both at Young and Rubicam and J. Walter Thompson, and that's of course during the days before there was the media departments were spun off into independent media buying services. And I learned a tremendous amount. You couldn't find a better place to learn, both being on the agency side, where you really exposed to every possible media, and you listen to a lot of presentations from every magazine in the world, every cable network or broadcast network in the world, and it's a great place to absorb and learn about our business and learn about the research industry. And then one day an intriguing opportunity opened up at Telemundo, and I went over and I saw Bruce Friend, again another person with a long distinguished career in a variety of roles in our industry. And this was at the time that Univision and Telemundo had just signed on for Nielsen people meter measurement. And I think even the day that I interviewed with Bruce was the day that that first report came out. And I talked about how that was going to revolutionize Spanish language television and marketing to Hispanics. And we talked about the need for a Siemens or MRI type service for the Hispanic market, and all the different research services that were needed, and that we felt that research was going to be a huge driver of Hispanic marketing. So I signed on, and I worked there for a number of years, and Bruce moved on and I got his role, and I actually hired Colleen Fahey-Rush to work alongside me, and it was a lot of fun, and it really was everything that we expected. That we were working with research vendors throughout the industry, launching new services, and really getting the attention of blue chip advertisers to take notice of the Hispanic market and target it. And then for a variety of reasons I moved on, and I worked at for several years at a company called Channel One, also known as the controversial Channel One. And what I was really excited about is that they had it's a 12-minute news program, goes to middle schools and high schools across the country. But what I really liked was that they were doing some very pioneering work with advertisers to show the effectiveness through test and control tracking research to show the impact of the advertising in Channel 1 schools versus the control group of students who didn't go to one of their schools. And that was great. And during all this period, I had a son, a second son, and then a third son on the way. And one day I got a call about an interesting job in Atlanta with Turner Broadcasting. And my wife and I were sort of tired of being in New York. It's hard to raise a large family there, and so we thought we'd roll the dice and move on south. And and the job was very intriguing because I'd never worked at a cable network, and I was asked to head up research for TNT, supporting the programming department, the marketing department, the emerging web group, and some other functions. And this was at a very critical time for TNT. They they were starting to get pressure from advertisers who felt that they were sort of too generic, and that TNT and TBS at that point in time, we're talking about 1999, were seen as identical. Some people call them T1 and T2. They shared NBA basketball, they shared wrestling, they shared the same movies to the point where the same movie might be on the two networks, not only the same day, but in the same time slot, because they didn't really do anything to differentiate them from one another. And there was an article called Five Blind Mice in one of the trade publications, and it talked about how the potential death of TNT and TBS and USA and FX and other, I forget who the fifth one is, it might have been Lifetime, what they perceived as unbranded general entertainment networks. So there was a lot of interest in really staking out a better brand identity for TNT. So they brought me in and did some research that eventually led to the drama positioning, and the We Know Drama tagline that we still use to this day. And over time, I assumed responsibilities for our other entertainment networks and did some similar research, but always with new methodologies because things were changing. So I helped shape the rebranding of TBS as a comedy network with a tagline Very Funny. Eventually we bought Core TV and really overhauled it, and that of course became True TV, and the tagline Not Reality, Actuality. And each time we did some really interesting segmentation research, and one of the things that I'm kind of most proud of is like the target audiences that we defined for these networks was really spotlighted to constituencies, whether it was to advertisers in presentations that were sort of explaining the direction of the networks, or even I mean, I'll never forget reading about our segmentation in Wall Street analyst reports, who in the same reports where they just lauded the direction that the company was taking some of these networks, and the stock went up that day. So I take full credit.